Thank you. So we're going to move on to, we're going to bring it back home. So this is a great segue, actually. And we're going to talk about the UAE and what's happening in our own backyard. I'd like to invite Caroline Faraj from CNN, who's going to be moderating Eyad Latif, who's counsel at Latham and Watkins, Martin Tideström, who's the head of BD at ADGM, and Suren Shetty, who's the CIO at UAE Exchange.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Caroline, as you heard, and I'm a journalist. So basically, I'm not really the expert here, but I try to learn from the experts in this field. From my observation, I would like to share with you some points, and then we will start the discussion. We hear a lot in general, in the media and in the word, some buzzwords like innovation, SMEs, startups, entrepreneurs, etc., etc. But when you dig and find about the finance allocated to all of these, you will find out that the Middle East represents less than 1% of the global VCs fund. You also hear some reports saying that less than 1% of all the VC venture capital get over 95% of all returns of technology industry, which basically means that they also fail as startups. We hear as well lots of people talking about the Silk Road and the shifting happening. And I'm sure that you know that in the Gulf, and especially in the UAE, lots of families are basically giving special and private lessons for their kids to speak Mandarin. And this is not a new thing. I've heard this since 2009, 2010. We started to hear people really sending their kids to study. So definitely there's something that people are looking towards the East. And it's not a secret that I'm actually sharing with you that China, Africa, India are always becoming now more and more popular when it comes to startups and VCs. Globally and in the media, which basically we're focusing on. So today, with my panelists here, I'll start by asking Martin, can you shed the light from your type of work and your role now in Abu Dhabi? Can you tell us about these kind of funds? Where are you now with the funds and supporting startups? Please.
That's ADGM?
Yes.
Yes.
Your role.
Thank you very much. Abu Dhabi Global Market, I hope many of you are familiar with us. We're the financial center of Abu Dhabi, a federal free zone. And as such, we are a separate jurisdiction from UAE, where local laws on civil and commercial areas are disapplied. We are instead an English common law-based legal environment. And I think that's very much the core of what we do. In terms of tasks, of mandate for an international financial center, many of them are relevant for the startup and entrepreneurship ecosystem. It's about driving competitiveness of the economy. It's about improving ease of doing business, of attracting more companies and enabling growth. We do that for a number of sectors with an initial focus on financial services, of course, asset management, wealth management, private banking, fintech has an important role in that, and capital markets. But as we've developed as an organization, and we opened only 4 years ago, we've seen a lot of interest from a number of other sectors as well. Entrepreneurship is one of them, primarily to come in and use the legal environment of ADGM as a place from which to set up and do business. As mentioned, we offer the English common law, tends to be more recognized, certainly on an international perspective, more trusted by investors, and therefore a good environment to set up business or hold business. So to do business, to hold business, we're of course, as we grow, also a ecosystem and a connector. So by being in ADGM, it's a chance for young companies to get access and proximity to investors and financiers throughout the life cycle. And adding to that now, I think we have a role within the greater Abu Dhabi efforts towards growth and diversification, where SME growth is extremely important. And I'm sure we'll have opportunity to come back to that point.
Okay, thank you very much. Sarah, I'll come to you now. Can you shed the light from your experience and your business about the funds and the work when it comes to startups and tech?
Okay, I represent Finabler, which is a global company started by Dr. Shetty, and I represent one of the organizations under it, UAE Exchange, as the CIO. Maybe we are not, our primary objective is not to, fund, but we have a lot of, VC activities which is kind of happening in the group. So we partner with the ADGM, and the DIFC FinTech Hubs to give the corporate mentorship programs, okay, which enables startups to actually commercialize their products. The way I have seen is, or we have seen, the startups have great ideas. Okay, they have some sparkling ideas where you need the customer base as well as largely the regulatory blessings. Okay, to I would say do the experimentation on. So we provide that kind of a platform, okay, for these startups. And we do have, funding also for these, shortlisted for startups.
We'll definitely come back to this now, Eyad. The 1% doesn't really look good to me. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, 1% doesn't look good, and what looks even worse is the fact that it's less than 0.5%,
Okay.
which
That's
is what
not
this
even-
market represents. But the flip side of that is that you can only go up from here. And
After how many years?
the truth is, and it's a good point, right? After how many years? And that is the key question here. It's really unfair when people talk about this region for them to start in 2008 as the marker for when you're judging this, when you're judging venture capital in the Middle East. And the reason for that is, Ken Miller mentioned a really good point, which is that VC is a state of mind, and that Silicon Valley was a state of mind. And in this region, that state of mind really set in only 2 years ago, in all honesty. And the barriers that have been really holding back a deluge of opportunity and potential are just now, those levees are just now breaking. And so, what we're seeing now is that the three main issues that have held back this market over the last decade, effectively, are being addressed. Number one was funding. That's no longer an issue, and we can talk about how that's being addressed. Mm-hmm. Talent, that's been a massive issue that's been holding back this space, and that's being addressed now. And the fragmented market / ease of doing business, which is being addressed now. So I think that when you're talking about this space in this region, you need to start 2 years ago and move forward. And it's we're just building the building blocks now.
Is that the case with you, Martin? Is that the same situation? Do you agree with
well,
Eyad?
yes, I definitely agree. I'm positive. What we see of both, obviously coming from the interest from the market, whether that's homegrown entrepreneurs with good ideas, whether it's scale-ups from the region wanting to use UAE as a base to grow further, perhaps to get into different levels of capitalization and then use this region as a stepping stone further away. Or if we look at the greater ecosystem, all the very strong efforts that are being put into now and the significant levels of resources done to developing UAE as a base, I think things are looking very, very positive.
And if I look at the business that you're doing in Abu Dhabi, and you have a very strong relationship with Singapore, and you're working closely to them, why did you choose the East?
It's an interesting question, and I think this is true not only for the tech field. It's easy, and certainly trying to attract financial services, that London, New York are seen as the role models, and they are by many means, but they've also had a very long time to go to where they have. I think we can find perhaps more interesting case studies looking, for example, at Singapore, seeing somebody who has come in a short period of time with not everything, going for them, building something with smart moves and persistence very, very successfully. And I think it's important to take, as in any young business, really find the right role models, see how the disruptors have done, and see what we can learn from that. Might not be a copy straight away, but mm-hmm. There's a lot of good examples.
And Suren, thank you. Suren, from your perspective, and when you monitor what's happening also, as well as that you mentioned that you support startups, what are the challenges that you face in order to basically really sign off something or take your time?
I think it's just really betting on what idea is going to click. So it's not easy. When you actually look at all the profiles, the people who come up with the startup ideas, which market it is going to kind of click in. If you talk about East, we have seen some successful stories of telecom and wallet kind of combination playing a great role. That's true in India too. I mean, when the demonetization happened, the overnight the wallets which were existing in the country, they started getting a lot of business. So I'm not sure the person who actually started with the wallet idea in India had this, the vision of saying that somebody is going to come and help him disrupt the market, by introducing demonetization. So it is truly to see, what kind of aspirations the startups come up with, what kind of ideas they come up with, and see which market it is going to help. Based on that, I think it is a tough decision, but we need to kind of make a decision.
And Eyad, from your perspective as a legal person, what are the challenges that basically the startups and those who are applying for these creative ideas are really facing, and are they like losing interest from this region?
I think that are they losing interest? I don't think so. Have people encountered issues? Yes. Are people encountering issues? Most definitely. But I think the upshot is that what you're seeing now is really very similar to what happened in the Nordic countries a few years ago, in the sense that what made the Nordic countries a unicorn factory is the government really stepping in and addressing funding, addressing talent, and addressing ease of doing business. And what's happening in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia in particular is exactly that. I mean, it's genuinely nothing short of revolutionary in terms of addressing these three gating items. And so, yes, people have had issues historically. Are they having issues now? Yes. But those issues are being addressed at light speed, and again, the upshot is that the UAE and Saudi are now becoming Finland and Sweden relative to the rest of the Middle East in terms of what they're putting in place to be a unicorn factory, and so you're going to see the fact that people are stepping up their games. And when I say people are stepping up their games, what I mean is that entrepreneurs are stepping up their game. VCs are stepping up their game. The government is stepping up its game. Everyone's getting with the program and realizes that, okay, my aspirations are here. In order to get here, I need to do 1, 2, 3. And they're just charging ahead at a speed that is breathtaking, quite frankly.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now, when we hear that people are looking towards the East, and I've interviewed many officials within this region, and especially from the UAE, and I still remember the quotes from Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid saying that when the recession took place, that we've been looking towards the East for quite some time, so we don't believe that we are really affected from what's happening in Europe and the West. So basically, the decision makers were already looking there. So why the East? Is it lack of trust, lack of ideas, perseverance from the startups? What exactly the problem, Martin? Why the East?
Well, I can't put myself at the level of the the ruler of Dubai necessarily, but I think as a country, and I think we can all see that, I think UAE plays the game extremely well. We are in a part of the world where we're the shift of the economic leadership really going from west to east, and we're in the middle of that path. I think UAE has historically done excellently with the benefits they have in terms of the location, in terms of the opportunities that the hydrocarbon wealth has created, and done something truly remarkable, I think, of driving growth, driving diversification. looking in more directions than what would be considered traditional is, of course, the smart thing to do. Looking at the trade patterns, for example, where many Asian countries play a very large role in both inbound and outbound. This is something important for the country, and I think this is something that creates need and opportunities for startups as well. So I think it goes very much hand in hand with economic policy at large.
In words, I'm convinced, but I'd love to see a number. Can you share any number, basically, or percentage that proves that things are really working well? From what you're doing.
I think we see, maybe you can help out with the national numbers. I see mainly from an Abu Dhabi and an ADGM point of view.
How much you're basically focusing on, how much is the percentage of your funds are focusing on startups from the region and from here? Is there any number that you can disclose? Just a percentage.
No, I can't, to be honest. And the reason is that ADGM itself, we're not an investor. We are a market. We are a facilitator for others to invest. And how the asset managers, the VCs, etc., spend their money is not something we necessarily see. I think what we do see is how government invest, for example, and I'll come to that in the workshop later on, but the Radan 50 billion dirham program, large part of that is going in SME support. Badal is doing a lot for this sector as well. So it's a very important sector, but I'm not the right person, unfortunately, to put the total number on it.
I mean, I can add some color here. I mean, is there enough raw data to give statistical data points that are useful and relevant? No, there's not enough. But there are key indicators that, as a legal person, I'm a real person too, not just a legal person. But as a lawyer, unfortunately, we're in the trenches. And so we see the trends, before they're in the paper, and the trends that we're seeing, and this is what I meant when I said everyone's kicking up their game, is that, and the key indicator that again hasn't reached a critical mass, so there's not enough to create statistical data points. But VCs based in real heavy-hitting VCs and venture capitalists in the U.S. are now looking at Middle East startups. They're investing in Middle East startups. And that's the level of which that's happening is record-breaking, right? There's kind of been a trickle here and there, but the last 6 to 12 months, heavy-hitting venture capitalists are getting into early-stage UAE-based, Saudi-based tech companies, and that is remarkable. It is forcing people to get with the program, and it's not just folks looking outside the region. To write $100 million check for something and just ride the coattails.
Not yet. Sir, with all those discussions that we're talking about the East, were you affected, or are you now trying to reposition your business towards that that road?
Okay. Now, see, we have been traditionally a business which has been run from the stores, which is brick and mortar. Now, if we are looking at we are looking at completely digitizing our products and services and business. Okay. So I may not be able to put a percentage of what kind of a growth we are looking at, but to support this kind of a digital vision, so we are really looking at some of the bright startups. Okay, to come up with the digital products. Okay, it could be on the payment space, or it could be on the
you mean from the region or
digital
from
KYC. It does not matter, to be very frank. It does not matter. We are in 45 countries. Okay, so different jurisdictions needs different kind of the KYC norms. So if we have some specialized KYC service provider, okay, who is digitizing the entire requirement of KYC, we don't have a requirement that we need to only look at one region. Okay, it could be from any region. To start with, we have completely digitized our KYC requirements here, partnering with EID, okay, Emirates ID Authority. We actually do every transaction above a threshold actually goes and verifies the EID, apart from doing the KYC through EID. So it does not matter which region the technology comes from or which region the startup comes from. We are open to see.
Okay, I'm going to open also the floor for a couple of questions, because I think we're running out of time, unfortunately. But anybody would like to ask any question? Please, can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tarun. I'm an investor in at least three UAE startups or regional startups.
Straight to the question, please.
And I think one of the challenges that I see, and I don't know how this is being addressed, is that one, the cost of startup and cost of operating, a typical startup over here is not that cheap. If you take in the licensing cost, the leasing cost which comes with the licensing and so on, it's not that easy for a scrappy startup to kind of start up. Second, the issue with most of these startups fail. Early stage failure rates are over 90%, and I don't see a mechanism where where you can disengage from a startup. Because if you've set up a legal entity, the cost of dissolution and so on are a big barrier for people to actually start up. So I don't know if somebody has a...
Thank you very much. Who would like to answer the question?
I'm happy to take a crack. Yeah, I mean, bingo is the answer to your question. That is one of the three major issues that is being addressed, and I'll explain how that's being addressed. I mean, and that's the third bucket that I mentioned, which was the ease of doing business / fragmented market. My friend to the right here is, they're doing a great job at the ADGM addressing this issue. I think it's, because that's the conversation that I have with every single entrepreneur is that, like, look, dude, it takes, an hour and $200 to set up a Delaware Corp. It takes much longer than that and much more than that to do that in this part of the world. But ADGM, the DMCC, SAGIA in Saudi Arabia, again, are addressing this head on. They are facilitating stuff in record speed at super low cost. They have licenses that are being created and that are now in place that are specifically curated and tailored and intended for use by an early stage company. So that's how it's being addressed. And again, it would have been great 5 years ago, but it's here now. And so that's what I mean when I say, don't look back 5 years ago and say, it cost me $20,000 to set up in Jafza, WTF.
Thank you. Second question.
Thank you. Again, I just...
Can you introduce yourself, please,
Yeah,
sir?
my name is Phoebe Francis. I'm from Union National Bank. So I just want to get some perspective. One is with respect to the ecosystem for micro as well as medium enterprises as a startup. We have seen plug and play coming into Abu Dhabi. We have seen a new bank, Anglo Gulf Trade Bank going to get licensed within the ADGM framework. So the medium enterprises are being addressed.
What's the question?
The question is, how are we tackling, again as seen from micro enterprises, small enterprises, what the ecosystem do for them?
Thank you. Martin?
Well, I think, thank you for the question. There's quite a lot being done and by a number of different organizations and hands. If you look, in Abu Dhabi in particular, you have a number of the free zones that have specific regimes for startups. There are accelerators, there are incubator programs. DED is doing fantastic work with the new trader license, for example, 1,000 activities that can be set up without the need for physical office space. There is support programs. There are programs set in place to identify or rather address some of the identified challenges, whether that's from a financing point of view, from a ease of setting up point of view, from a getting easier payment from government, for example, which might be another challenge for some sort of companies. We have academia, started at NYU included, doing fantastic work as well. So I think there is a lot of work being done. With the launch now of the Ramadan 21 program, I think that's all getting a very clear direction, more coordination and much more resources. So the many initiatives that are underway will be accelerated.
Okay, no more questions? I think we run out of time. Thank you super much. And I'm sure that you will have some more questions to ask my panelists, and they will be definitely during the break outside. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, so well done on staying in the room, because, that's 3 in a row. So we're going to take a 10-minute break now, and then make sure you come back. There's going to be a very special fireside chat between my dear colleague Tamer and Pule, who actually came all the way from South Africa and brought us into one of the best deals we've made called Andela. So don't miss it.